So my name is Walt Opie. I'm the Executive Director of Buddhist Pathways Prison Project. We are a nonprofit, mainly just a group of volunteers that go into prisons and lead Buddhist services all over the state of California. We're in 12 state prisons. I go into Solano State Prison in Vacaville. We also go into 2 jails in Santa Cruz area and 1 federal prison at Atwater Federal Prison, all in the state of California. So, and we just have about 50 to 60 active volunteers that do this work for us. Buddhism is both a religion and a system of teachings and practices designed to alleviate suffering in the world. The Buddha said, "I teach one thing and one thing only, and that is suffering and the end of suffering." And so that's kind of our motto. We call ourselves BP3, Buddhist Pathways Prison Project. And so we're trying to relieve suffering in the prison system, and we bring these powerful teachings that are 2,600 years old into the prisons and jails of California. And we have found that it does bring some relief to those that we meet with, the men and women in these prisons and jails. We teach them basic meditation and mindfulness practices. Speaking of enlightenment, let me put my hat on because it's about 80-some degrees out here. But actually, enlightenment is not a word that I would tend to use in relation to Buddhism. I prefer the word awakening, and maybe even awakenings. We can awaken to our suffering, and we can see the causes of our suffering, and we can find ways to bring relief to that suffering. The Buddha talked about how our suffering is caused by craving or attachment to desire. We have desire to be comfortable, to have pleasant experiences all the time, and we kind of have an aversion to the unpleasant or the difficult. So one thing that the Buddha, I don't know if he used the word enlightenment, but he used the word nibbana or nirvana in Sanskrit. And that actually in ancient India was a cooking term that had to do with cooling, the cooling of your fire, your cooking fire, or the cooling of what you were cooking. And so I like to think of Buddhist practices as cooling the fires of our suffering. And that's kind of what we're trying to do as well. In the prison, we provide a safe haven in our groups, our meditation and Buddhist groups, a safe haven from the intense environment of the prison. And we, create a space where everyone can relax and feel safe and feel a sense of community and be seen as a human being and not as a crime that they may have committed, and not as someone to be feared, but as someone to be loved or cared about, just as a basic human being. I know in my group in Solano State Prison, we tend to begin maybe with some chanting. We have some inmates who enjoy the chanting, and then we usually lead some kind of meditation or mindfulness meditation. Usually it's mindfulness of the breath to begin. The breath is a powerful tool. It's always here with us. And it actually calms the body to bring our mindful attention to the breath, and also helps the mind calm down. Usually when you start meditating, the first thing you notice is how busy our minds are and how much up in our heads we tend to live most of the time. So the meditation, we also bring in yoga and qigong and other mindful movement practices, and that allows us to land more in our bodies and just feel what it's like to be more present in our bodies. And that can be very helpful. It works if you have, say, anger issues. It actually helps to work with those issues when you're more in touch with your body, because you can feel the anger energy beginning to arise from, say, a small slight in the dining hall or out on the yard. And so when you're more in tune with your body, you're actually less likely to get caught by these strong emotions because you recognize them sooner. And we teach ways of seeing that and bringing wisdom to what's happening, and not taking things so personally all the time. And in terms of working with anger, I have noticed that whenever we bring that up in the prison groups, it really gets the attention of our community members in the group, because it seems like many of them, if not all of them, do work with anger issues. And one technique that I've heard about from another program at San Quentin prison is called the Q-tip. They ask everyone to carry a literal Q-tip in their pocket, and Q-tip stands for quit taking it personally, which I think is wonderful. And at our retreat that we had recently, we had a guy that is now out of San Quentin who went through the program there, and he actually still had the Q-tip in his pocket, and he pulled it out of his pocket just to show us. So he still carries it out into his life outside of the prison as well. And that's also what we're trying to do, not only give people skills to help them work with difficulties in prison, but then when they get out, they'll also have these skills to help them navigate the complicated modern world, which some of them haven't had to deal with for 30, 20, 30, 40 years. And so I think that this helps them out in the real world as well. And I have seen that, seen some very positive results from guys who are now out. And we also serve women as well, I should mention. So one of the key teachings in Buddhism is what's called the Four Noble Truths. The first noble truth we discussed, it's the noble truth of suffering, that there is suffering inherent in life. Everything is impermanent, constantly changing, and we're kind of born into this inescapable condition. And then the second noble truth is that there is a cause of our suffering around the conditions of life, and that is our attachment to wanting things to be different than they are. And the third noble truth is that there is release from this attachment to wanting things to be different, and that is where Nirvana comes in, that we can cool the fires of this strong wanting things to be different with practices like meditation and being mindful of the breath and the body and our thoughts and the feelings that we experience, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. So Buddhist teachings really help us work with this and bring wisdom to all of this. And the fourth noble truth is the Noble Eightfold Path, which starts with right view or right understanding, and that's understanding how suffering works in our lives, understanding the first three noble truths in particular. And it includes right livelihood, not causing harm. So another key teaching in Buddhism is to first do no harm to another living being, kind of like the Hippocratic Oath.